Welcome into Studio A. I'm Maria Trivelpeice alongside Kyle Youmans for another episode of All-American. Kyle, regular season, the end of it quickly approaching, so we got to talk about these standings that are coming up.
Ooh, it's getting close. The American Conference Championship week and championship picture starting to take shape across the country. Really excited about these next couple of weeks. And, of course, these standings are starting to get tighter as we go. Of course, Army's still up there at the top. Tulane there as well. A chance for both of those teams with only one result this week to lock themselves into the title game. If Tulane beats Navy, that's exactly how we get there. It would be an Army-Tulane championship matchup. The only question from that point moving forward would be, where is that championship taking place?
And it's interesting, too, because East Carolina and Memphis are still alive to make the title game. They need a little bit of help to get there. We can break that down if that happens in the upcoming weeks. But there's a lot of little things that have to occur, and we don't want to stress anyone out with all of that. But for sure, there's still a lot of things that can be shaken up in these last couple of weeks of American Conference play.
Isn't that interesting, though? Because you've got Army there at the top. Of course, they take care of business against North Texas in what was a low-scoring affair that is shocking, given that it involved the North Texas Mean Green and the Army offense, the fact that it was 14-3 the final. But also, Tulane just continues to roll in conference play. That conference win streak continues to rise. The fact that they continue to take care of business within the conference brackets is impressive, and they've got a chance this week to lock it up. Navy, though, on the other side, is trying to not only keep themselves alive in the conference title picture, but if they win against Tulane, it would keep Army in their bye week from locking themselves into the title game. So Navy trying to keep Army out of it for now and keep their hopes alive at the same time. A lot of motivation there for the midshipmen this week.
Well, there's just so many different things that can happen, two different games that can have an impact on just where people end up in the standings. The big thing, though, is if Tulane wins, they pretty much solidify everything. Yeah. So all those if necessary things won't come to fruition, but that's a big if because the midshipmen have a lot to play for.
Let's talk about that Tulane team here for a little bit as we welcome in our special guest right here at the top of the show, Rene Ingoglia, college football analyst for ESPN. He's got the chance to call a ton of football throughout the year, including the Tulane Green Wave. And you're the first repeat member of this show, by the way, Rene. So I think you should wear that like a badge of honor in doing so. But appreciate you joining us again. And I want to start with Tulane taking down this Temple Owls team. They got back to business even if they weren't in business initially. They keep things rolling, exactly, and put up 52 unanswered points to begin that one. And what did you see this week against the Owls?
Well, first, thanks for having me back again. It is an honor. When I prep for games, you kind of get a vision in your head how you think the game's going to play out, and it usually never does. This one did. I thought Tulane has one of the best offensive lines in all of college football. And one of the best running backs, Mekhi Hughes, to go with it. I made the analogy on TV. It's like peanut butter and jelly. The way he runs and that offensive line just rolls together. And they just controlled the line of scrimmage. It's kind of unfair for Mekhi Hughes because you see all these great running backs and he's up there with it. And of course, Ashton Jeanty at Boise State putting up big numbers. Mekhi Hughes had 150 yards and 2 touchdowns essentially in the first half. He could have probably had 250 in that game. But it didn't call for it, right? Because they were up so big. And so just a dominating performance. This is a defense, guys, that only returned 4 starters. So Greg Gasparotto, defensive coordinator, they really don't even think they're playing their best ball on the defensive side. They're starting to gel and get better. And, it's a team really that should be 9-1. I know they're kicking themselves because they had Kansas State beat. And so just looking ahead, obviously Boise has that huge lead in the group of 5 race, but first and foremost, you got to get to your conference championship. And you guys talked about a little bit in your open. How fitting is it if Tulane can go on the road in Annapolis and beat Navy? It knocks them out of the championship and then puts them in against their arch rival Army in the American Athletic Conference Championship, which would be a great game, but we'll see what happens next week.
No doubt about it. Speaking on this Temple game as well, and you mentioned Army, one of the things we've talked about with the Black Knights is the fact that they start so quickly. Well, Tulane has kind of become that team as well, and whether it is Mekhi Hughes or it's Darian Mensah at the quarterback position, they find a way to get a balanced attack established early. What has been the key on the offensive side of the football to keep that balance and get off to these hot starts?
Well, it's the consistency of running the football. I always say at its origins, okay, football is a simple game. All right, I know I'm a former running back, so everyone thinks I say this because I'm a running back. If you can run the ball, stop the run on defense, and just keep that consistency, you're going to win more times than not. And that's what Tulane does. It's just they control the line of scrimmage. And Rene Ingoglia, by the way, redshirt freshman, if you ask John Summerall, he just has the it factor. No one thought he was going to win the starting job. They thought it was going to be Ty Thompson, a transfer from Oregon, or Kai Horton. I love that they have packages for Ty Thompson because you want to make sure he comes back next year in this crazy world of college football. But I just think the key to them with those fast starts offensively is controlling the line of scrimmage. And when you can run the ball, that opens up the pass game for their wide receivers. And they have good wide receivers, but they have a little motto. Joe Craddock, the offensive coordinator, tells his wide receivers, no block, no rock, meaning you better block in the run game, and then we'll throw it to you. And so they're just starting to gel. And I had Army earlier this year, too, so I got to see them in person. Obviously, Army does what Army does. Super impressed with them. And their defense, Army's defense, does not get enough credit. Nate Woody, the defensive coordinator, they are a dominant defensive team, and I know you saw that this week in North Texas, a team that averaged probably over 40 points a game, and they get held to 3. Army's defense doesn't get enough credit. That's why I think if this thing comes to fruition, and it is Tulane and Army in the AAC championship, wow, what a matchup that'll be for the conference.
I know we're super excited to see whatever the matchup plays out, whether it's Army and Navy, Tulane and Army, just some really good teams at the top. And like we mentioned in the open, there's some hanging around who could still find their way into that American Conference Championship game. But, we talked a little bit of offense. Let's talk a little bit more now about Tulane's defense. I think it's really interesting just how you said that they don't think they're even playing some of their best ball. You look at some of the performances that they've had. They've been so dominant. So, Rene, I'll ask you, is there something that they can do better? And if so, what would that be?
Yeah, I just get a little healthy, right? Sam Howard was one of their linebackers, was out last week, and I think he probably could have went, but they said, we're going to rest him and get him ready for Navy and this stretch. And so just getting fresh. One thing Tulane does, and a lot of defensive coordinators try to do this, but they just don't have the personnel because the depth isn't there. They rotate 9 different players through that defensive line. So they want to get those guys about 30 reps a piece a game, keep them fresh, and I think that pays dividends. They get a really good pass rush on the outside by Aiden Huntington, Matthew Fobbs-White. The linebackers, Tyler Grubbs is the leader in there, and the secondary has some experience. Bailey Despaney back there is the leader. So it's a really good group that, again, is just coming into their own, which is really good for them as you get this last stretch here as they try to get themselves into the conference championship game. And takeaways, by the way, they're one of the best in the nation, taking the football away.
No doubt.
They protect it on offense. That is a great match. It's one of the stats I look at is turnover ratio. They're one of the best in the nation.
So you're constantly looking at the stats. We have a big matchup coming up. We already mentioned it a little bit. They play Navy. What are some keys that Tulane needs to execute in order to beat the midshipmen?
See, this is another, it's a fascinating matchup. And if you're sitting there and you're John Summerall and you're his coaches and you're Tulane, you're thinking, okay, we win one, we secure it. Of course, the one they got to beat is Navy, because we all know it's always a nightmare getting ready for Army and Navy. Mm-hmm. And they're very similar offenses. I know everyone wants to say Navy is with Drew Cronick, the new offense coordinator, kind of a hybrid wing T. I do think Blake Horvath throws the ball downfield a little bit more than Army does.
It's a sling team.
So if you're, if you're defense for Tulane, you gotta be ready on the back end. So to me, the key for them defensively is eye discipline. You'll hear defensive coordinators say dirty eyes. You can't look where you're not supposed to. So if they do that athletically, I think they're fine. And then in the running attack, again, Tulane likes to control the ball too, just like Navy and Army does. So it's going to be a really great matchup. And again, I think this game is won at the line of scrimmage, the interior lines of scrimmage. So I would give the advantage to that defensive line that I just talked about for Tulane, the way they rotate in. But again, you have to be assignment sound. If you go to the wrong gap, Army and Navy, and this week it's Navy, will make you pay for it. So this should be a really good ball game.
Really excited about that one. It's actually my game of the week as well. I think when it comes to Navy, Tulane, the juggernauts in both sides of things. But I know one thing I respect about you as an analyst is you don't just keep your eyes on one conference. You are all over college football, coast to coast, across the country. I want to ask, is Mekhi Hughes, and you also appreciate great running back play, is Mekhi Hughes the best running back in the conference, and where would he rank in terms of the country right now in terms of running backs as true, legitimate ball carriers?
Yes, 100% best running back in the conference. I'm actually a special advisor to the Doak Walker Committee. So, I send them my top 10 running backs. Obviously, Mekhi Hughes is in there. I have the good fortune. I called the Boise State game this year, so I saw Ashton Jeanty in person. Man, Ashton Jeanty is everything you think he is. Very similar, by the way. Boise State has a really good offensive line. They mesh really well. He's kind of running away with everything, though, because his numbers are so good, Ashton Jeanty. Mekhi Hughes, very similar type of back. I think Jeanty's a little bigger than Mekhi, but Mekhi put on about 5 or 6 pounds of muscle this year, he told me, and really worked in the offseason on his speed in the open field, and it shows. Again, I think there's been a couple games this year where Mekhi Hughes' numbers could have been better, right? Which puts him more on that national stage with a Jeanty, but they've had some blowouts, and you're going to rest your big gun. But is he one of the top 5 running backs overall in the nation, Mekhi Hughes? Yes, absolutely.
I agree with you. And I think if he were to enter the NFL draft this year, he would be in that conversation, at least for a draft pick. He may not be a day 1 or day 2 guy, but I think on day 3, a team would really like to see him there. And if he continues to grow, he's just a redshirt sophomore. If he takes another year to grow, he could be a day 1 or day 2 guy. We just don't know it yet.
And I agree with you, Kyle. So if I'm him and his representatives, Ashton Jeanty's going to go, right? Yes. So why even compete with that?
Yeah.
And I think John Sumrall will agree with us. Come back, you're still young. And, and I think he may, because it's a different world, right? With NIL, they're making money. The House settlement's probably going to come through this spring from the NCAA. That could be a 2-hour show in and of itself, where the schools are going to have to pay the players. So why rush? And he's been working on that speed in the open field, which will pay dividends for him at the next level. Mekhi, come back. Coach Sumrall, Joe Craddock would be very happy.
No doubt. And we would be happy, too, because we get to talk about it a little bit more next year on All-American. And, Rene, before we let you go, where are you going to be this week? You've got another great week on the docket.
So I jumped to a rival conference, guys. Sunbelt this week. Good matchup, though. I have JMU at Old Dominion. Looking forward to that Saturday at 4 o'clock on ESPNU. So, I'll go scout out Sunbelt a little bit.
Well, we appreciate you joining us. We'll see you on an American call soon enough, and we'll be
Thanks,
happy
guys.
with
Appreciate
you.
It. Have a great one.
Rene Ingoglia joining us here on All-American. I love talking with him. He just knows it all.
I learn something every time I hear him talk. I'm just like, oh, my goodness. I'm so engrossed in everything that he says because he's so locked in to not just the American, but as you said, all across the country with college football.
Follow him on Twitter if you haven't already. If you're a fan of college football, Rene Ingoglia on Twitter, one of the best at what he does across the country. All right, let's talk about that Navy team a little bit because we mentioned them in their matchup this week with Tulane. They got back to business this week against South Florida, and they had an opportunity to do so after losing those 2 straight games. Turnover bug was biting the midshipmen, but they took care of the football, dominated the line of scrimmage, and they ended up coming out on top in this one, just fully in control of this football game and coming away 28-7 over South Florida.
Well, they looked like the Navy that we talked about at the beginning of the season, and I honestly think that they let Notre Dame beat them twice with their loss against Rice, and so I just like to see the way that they cleaned things up this week against South Florida. They were super aggressive right off the jump, scoring on those first 2 drives, and I just think that that's something that I don't know. I just think that they looked more confident, and I think that will help them as they head into this matchup against Tulane.
Blake Horvath got back to what he does best, which is, like Rainey just talked about, the throwing out of the sling tee. I love the offense. I've talked about it before, but I thought really the key to this was getting the guys that got you there back involved. Eli Heidenreich, Alex Teska. These are guys that are weapons, that are playmakers for this Navy midshipman offense, and they got to them early, and they made sure they got the ball in their hands and in everybody some space.
Yeah, and I think Coach Newberry talked about it as well. He said, look, our guys played extremely hard, and I thought we executed for the most part. And that's something that you hadn't seen them do the 2 weeks prior. So I think, as you said, getting the ball back into Heidenreich's hands, Teska's hands, they did a good job. And then Horvath just doing what he does best.
He's not Heisman Horvath anymore, which is unfortunate, just because of the 2 losses. But he's still a weapon. He's still a guy.
He's so good. He's still so athletic. I think that'll preview to some of the other things that we'll see later in the show.
You like teasing that all the way.
Do.
Like we're at the beginning of the show, and you always like throwing out the
because I want people to. I want people to stay tuned. You know,
okay,
you got to give them something to watch.
That's fair. There is something to watch this week, and we previewed it a little bit there. Navy-Tulane, and I think Rene outlined it there, where the line of scrimmage is going to be crucial for this matchup. I think the Navy defense is where it's going to start. They were able to force Bryce Archie into a couple of mistakes, couple bad decisions, got to him early. They're going to need to do the same thing to Darian Mensah that they did to Archie. Young quarterback, big arm, lots of talent, but they need to force him into bad decisions, and maybe it's a couple takeaways. Get those turnovers early, and then hold on to the ball themselves. I mean, if we're talking about keys to the game, what are you looking at between Tulane and Navy?
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head there. They have to take care of the football, Navy does, and I also think that they need to kind of use some of that momentum from this past week against South Florida, right? You had 2 losses in a row. How can you rebound? And then on the Tulane side, they just need to continue to do what they've been doing this entire season in conference play. They've just been bullying opponents, and I think this is the battle of the bullies, I'm calling this, because I think you think of the toughness of the Naval Academy and you think of the way that Tulane plays football. I think who's going to out-bully the other one is the one that wins the game.
Yeah, the bullies of the American Conference, and maybe not the only bullies that are in action, or that were in action last week. Nobody in action this week if you are attending West Point Army. They took care of business, 14-3, the final score over North Texas. Holding North Texas to 3 points, I don't know what is more impressive, the fact that they held the North Texas offense to 3 points, or that North Texas held Army to 14 points. The North Texas defense that hadn't done anything right really throughout the season holds Army to nothing. They pick off Bryson Daly for the first time this season. Ultimately, this was a tough, gritty, ugly football game, but that's the type of game that Army likes to play.
Well, see, it's funny. If you would have asked me to preview this matchup, I would have told you this was going to be a shootout. Yep. You look at the way that these offenses have been playing, and then you also look at the way that, North Texas.
The over-under was 66.5.
Yes.
We got 17. That's what we got.
And so it was like completely, when I was going back through it, I was like, wait, what happened now? So I think that the big story of this game is the Army defense, and I kind of, Rainey said it right there. They're so good, but I don't think we realized how good they are. Just the way that they shut down Chandler Morris in this offense, something that nobody really has been able to do this year, even in games where North Texas has lost. Like, their offense has showed up. And so I just think that Army's defense, we got to start talking about it even more. I know we've highlighted it. It was good to see Bryson Daly back in the lineup for Army as well. He did what he had to do to get the Black Knights the win. And I think that this is really promising for Army now they can get back to playing how we want to see them play.
No, this was a game of things that we haven't seen in 2024 on both sides. Because literally. North Texas drives down, takes the lead. First time Army has trailed all season long. Then Army goes back down. They score. They go up 7-3. You saw the touchdown there from Bryson Daly. But then turnovers started to go back and forth. North Texas had chances. They forced a fumble from Udo, which doesn't happen very
Never
often.
Happens, nope.
Bryson Daly threw an interception, which hasn't happened this season. And then you turn around and you hold them underneath the 17-point mark, which hadn't happened either. So all of it was interesting. But I want to say this about the Army defense. North Texas is so good on offense that this might have been as impressed of a defensive showing in college football all year across the board as I've seen. Army was perfect, nearly flawless in every element of their defensive game plan: tackling, angles, physicality, assignments, reads, eyes in the backfield, and not getting caught in doing so. They were almost flawless, as you have to be against the North Texas offense. That's what's scary, and I think other teams should take note, including the teams that they could see in the American Conference Championship game, because if you are Tulane, if you are Navy that you're going to see down the road either way, whether it's a title game or whether it's in Philadelphia at Lincoln Financial Field, you're going to see this Army defense, and no one wants to see this Army defense because what they did to North Texas just put the entire country on notice because of how good they were defensively. Is really, really impressive. And honestly, that makes me think Army is the favorite to take the title. That's where I'm at right now. I initially might have said Tulane because I think they're the more complete team, but this defense is elite, and I think that's what's going to be the game changer.
They have that elite defense, and then they get their quarterback back this week. Bryson Daly returns.
He's a game changer, too.
Again, another game changer. So just talk to me a little bit about what you think Bryson Daly did well in this game, especially after not playing against Air Force.
Yeah, it wasn't his perfect game. He wasn't phenomenal, but he's a tough physical runner, and he's a leader that people can turn to when times are at its toughest. I think when they were struggling to move the ball against the North Texas defense that teams have been able to move the ball against pretty significantly, they relied on him and Udo to kind of find their way back into the fold. And that's what Daly brings that I don't think anybody else can bring, a guy to rally around. I mean, they call him Captain America for a reason. And I know that's just kind of a cliche. It's a quarterback that plays for a military academy. If you're a good quarterback that does so, you'll probably be compared to the Marvel's Avenger universe or whatever it is. I think you have to look at Daly as the straw that stirs the drink for Army, but it's the defense that's the steam engine that's not going to slow down anytime soon. So that's the kind of the comparison that I have. This offense can be good without Daly, but they're at their best with Daly. I think this defense is the most elite side of the Army team, and nobody's really talking about it that way.
I mean, they kept him in games, right? Against Air Force, that didn't look great right off the jump. So the fact that the defense can keep them in that game, then they come and have this performance against North Texas. I mean, I think things are looking good for the Black Knights.
We just talked about what I like about Mekhi Hughes, and I think Mekhi Hughes is a phenomenal player. Best running back, best ball carrier in the American. Bryson Daly is the best weapon in the American, and I think that's still to be proven. Now, let's talk about the North Texas side of things as well, because there are some things that you got to talk about with the Mean Green. I think out of their losses this year, it's been hard to be as impressive in these losses, as impressive in losses as North Texas has. We looked at it before they started this 3-game stretch against Memphis, against Tulane, against Army. We said this was going to be a tough stretch, but the fact that they put up 44 points against Memphis, the fact that they put up 37 points and was one score away from an upset of Tulane, and then you hold Army to 14 points and have multiple takeaways and a stone-cold Steve Austin celebration on the sideline. I mean, that's where I think North Texas can build their confidence going into their final 3 matchups. They're sitting at 5-4. They haven't been able to get that bowl eligibility win. But you got 3 shots at it here, Maria, at UTSA, which is not easy to win in the Alamo Dome, against East Carolina at home, and then at Temple up in Philadelphia. I think these next 3 games is where North Texas is going to define their season. Either they will build off of the ways that they played against Memphis, Tulane, and Army in a positive manner and win these next 3 games and go 8-4. That would be a tremendous turnaround for Eric Morris and his staff. And then, you're going into a bowl game. You got a chance to win a bowl game for the first time since 2013. There are a lot of ways that you can help this North Texas season turn itself around. However, it could go the other way, too. And you can have a 3-game losing streak turn into a 4 or a 5 or a 6-game losing streak. And then all of a sudden, all that momentum, all that hope that you had early in the season comes crashing down. I don't think it's going to happen. I think North Texas, I'm leaning toward the better half of that statement. They may not be 8-4, but I think 7 wins, 6 wins, those are going to be attainable. I think the best case scenario for the Mean Green is they win out and they go to a bowl game and they have an opportunity to do something special in year number 2 under Eric Morris.
No, absolutely. I mean, you kind of said it right there. They're right in these games against the top teams in the conference that we keep talking about every single week. Their offense is so good. The fact that they can put up that many points against those opponents and then to hold Army, as you said, to 14 last week. Now, talking about where they head from here, how do they get back on track after these losses? They have a little bit of a rivalry game, so to speak, North Texas grad, maybe enlighten anybody who doesn't know about this rivalry, what it's going to look like, and maybe some keys for the Mean Green against UTSA.
Yeah, they don't like each other, not a whole lot. And now it's funny because it's one of the newer rivalries in the state of Texas because UTSA's football program is still in its early stages, and I think the disdain from North Texas comes from the early success that they've had under Jeff Traylor. So they've always kind of battled back and forth, and one of the more defining drives of the recent North Texas success was a 98-yard drive that they had where Mason Fine worked down the field, found Rico Bussey Jr. as time was dwindling. They go 90-plus yards and upset UTSA at that point, what was called Apogee Stadium. Then you go back, and they've played each other since then with chances to go to conference title games, to try and go to a bowl game here and there. North Texas welcomed in a number 22 UTSA to Apogee Stadium just a couple years ago, undefeated, 11-0, a chance to go undefeated on the regular season. What happened? North Texas beat them down 45-24. So there's disdain on both sides of this rivalry, and I think we're going to see it again. Jeff Traylor is 27-3 in his first 30 games at the Alamo Dome as a head coach. Do not go sleepwalking into UTSA, especially with the way they've been playing as of late. Things have clicked for this UTSA ball club, and I think North Texas, if they pitter-patter into this one, if they slow roll into this one, they're going to get beat in San Antonio, and it would not be fun for a North Texas grad to watch. I'm not going to name any names, but UTSA.
Well, I didn't go to North Texas, so.
Yeah, I don't know who I'm talking about.
I have no idea who you're talking about.
But that's my point, though, is UTSA had such high expectations, and they're starting to reach those expectations. It's a little late to hit all the goals and the conference championship aspirations that they had in store early in the season. But Jeff Traylor is always about building to the future and building a program and a winning culture in San Antonio. They can still establish that the way they've been playing lately. Should be 5-4, 6-3, but instead they're 4-5 coming off of a big win against Memphis. This is a good chance for them to continue that momentum.
I want to go back really quickly to North Texas and UTSA. So what you're telling me is we are going to have some petty tweets.
I hope so.
At the end of this week.
I hope so.
Okay. Well, we'll have to look out for that. Maybe we'll highlight some of them on next week.
I'll make sure that the social media department at North Texas knows. UTSA, you do your part. Let's get petty.
I want the petty tweets. This is our call for the petty tweets. North Texas, UTSA. Tag us. We would love to see them as well. And then maybe we can feature some of the best ones on the show. Yeah. Pending you're good with that and producer Zach Fisher.
Totally fine. Go find my old tweets too. Get after it.
Whatever you want to do, have some fun with it. But anyway, let's go back to that win against Memphis. UTSA. Talk about this one. What did you see?
I saw a complete ball club. I saw complimentary football for the first time. Sure, they gave up 36 points, and the defense gave up some early scores. Mario Anderson Jr. had a day early on, and they were running the football in the first half. But they answered the bell quickly. Back and forth scores, beginning the shootout that we initially ensued from that point forward. They were able to keep track and then set the pace over Seth Hennigan and company, which is saying something because they still had things rolling on offense early. But I give a lot of credit to Owen McCown because in a duel with Seth Hennigan, who's been there, done that within the American Conference brackets before, he found his weapons. He found Chris Carpenter for deep balls a couple times. The tight ends were electric, both as blockers and in the red zone as receivers. Lots of things to build on for this offense moving forward, and I think it's something that they had been searching for, and they've found it over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, Owen McCown, 20 of 37, 280 yards passing, and every week we talk about him getting better and better. We always say, even when they lose, we're like, oh, you know who looked really good in that game? Owen McCown. So I think when you're talking about building what Jeff Traylor wants to do, he might be one of those keys for that in these next couple of games, just the way that he's been playing football. And again, we don't get to see it as much because his team hasn't been at the top of the conversation with some of those teams that have been winning more games, but he's looked really good. And I think he's going to help in this next matchup for the Roadrunners.
Oh, no doubt about it. I think when you have two of the top quarterbacks, not only passing-wise in the conference, but in the country. I mean, Owen McCown's up there as just as much as Chandler Morris is, but both guys at some certain points of the year had struggled with turnovers. That's what's going to be the X factor in this matchup. Whichever quarterback can take care of the football while still being extremely productive, because you're going to have production. I think it's going to be one of those other games that we talked about, like Memphis and Tulsa for UTSA. And for North Texas, it'll be like the Memphis game and the Tulane game. This is going to be played in the 40s and the 30s, most likely. I don't think we're going to see a 14-3 North Texas game again. If Owen McCown can take care of the football but still find production, if Chandler Morris can do the same thing, that's what's going to be the key for whoever comes out in this Lone Star Showdown. And I'm really excited to see who gets those extra possessions and who takes care of them the most.
You know, talking about good quarterbacks, there was another good quarterback performance this week at East Carolina. Maybe we chat a little bit about that one. Kyle, you want to take it from here?
Yeah, let's talk about it. The Pirates of East Carolina, 49-14 over the top of Florida Atlantic. I mean, this was another phenomenal outing for the Pirates. Back-to-back wins, and I loved the play calling early on. You talk about what Hauser was able to do as the quarterback. They made a quarterback switch. They made a coaching switch, but it was all about the coaching early on that I thought was impressive about the Pirates. They kept the Owls defense honest with misdirection, motion. They had options thrown in there, all things that Florida Atlantic has struggled with this season, and it helps the quarterback get in a rhythm. And that's exactly what Hauser found was that rhythm, and he did not look back. 17 of 22 passing, 343 yards passing, 5 touchdowns through the air. Count them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 touchdowns through the air. Commanded the offense with confidence and was given a clean pocket to do so. I thought the offensive line played well, gave him time to throw. This was as impressive of a game plan and an execution as I've seen from ECU all year. And remember, I was really high on them at the early parts of the season, and they're still one of 5 teams, Maria.
1 of 5.
5 teams that are still alive, even though it's a sliver of a chance. I'm saying there's a chance with East Carolina.
So you're saying there's a chance?
Absolutely, to get into the American Conference title game. They need some help in order to do so, but the fact that they're playing good football down the stretch is very encouraging for everybody out there in Greenville.
Well, you know, you mentioned all of those numbers from Hauser, right? You forgot his 1 rushing touchdown as well.
Oh,
so, you know, he casually 6 touchdowns.
Just an easy half dozen.
Yeah, he was okay this week. You know, I'd say he
scored
performed
touchdowns like I ordered donuts in the morning.
Ooh,
get a nice
donuts?
half dozen.
Ooh, half dozen. Do you eat them all at once, or how
all
does that
at
go?
once? Yeah.
Good for
Before
you.
I even get to work.
Oh, okay, good. I heard you're not supposed to have sugar in the morning, though.
Oh, well.
But I mean, maybe Caden Hauser
Supposed
does
to not
that.
do a lot of things, and I still do it. Makes sense.
Well, back to football for just a second.
Threw you off a little bit.
You did, just a little bit. But no, ECU playing some really good football right now. They have Tulsa coming up. What do you think that it's going to take for the Pirates to continue on this roll that they've been on?
Much of the same that they showed last week. I mean, even in Tulsa's wins this year, they've given up points. So keep that secondary of the Golden Hurricane out of sorts, guessing early, make the offense press a little bit on their side of things. That's when Tulsa can get themselves into a little bit of trouble. But keep your foot on the gas, because I'm looking at you, UTSA. Keep your foot on the gas, because Tulsa can find their way back into the fold. And I think if you're ECU, you do exactly what you did, keeping them off balance, keeping the misdirection, the option, the big plays, the shots down the field rolling. That's what you're going to have success against. And don't look back after that 49-plus point outing the last time out. I need you to do that again against Tulsa this week.
You know, ECU's looked really good. Ever since that loss to Charlotte, I feel like things are just clicking a little bit more. They have a little bit more energy, so I'm interested to see how that one plays out. We got another team who's lurking in the possibility of being in that American Conference Championship game, and that's Memphis.
Memphis Tigers lurking yet again. They're starting to run out of the ready to pounce time because, of course, since we last were on this show, we took last week off because of the American Soccer Championships, but another preview for later. But the Memphis Tigers have lost a game and they've won a game. They fell in that matchup 2 weeks ago to UTSA that we just talked about a little bit, but then they rebound in a big way against Rice 27-20. This was another one of those grinded out games, not pretty on either side of things. Memphis what they needed to get back on track, and it really started on the ground. 207 yards, difference maker. I mentioned Mario Anderson Jr. He was fantastic again. Brandon Thomas touchdown with just under the 12-minute mark in that fourth quarter, helping them seal what was a 27-13 lead at the time. That's what makes Memphis a great team, is balance. And I thought against Rice, they did a good job of saying, hey, the passing attack's not working for us as much today. It's just not Seth Hennigan's day. Let's attack on the ground and keep this clock moving, and in doing so, they eliminated every opportunity for Rice to try and make this a shootout, and ultimately ended up in a 27-20 win. And
I just think it's the way that they are cool, calm, and collected in those moments as well. You've seen them when it gets down to the wire, they're still able to pull out some games. You saw that one against Charlotte, Seth Hennigan and his leadership, and then you just, as you mentioned, Mario Anderson, he's been really good for them as well. Another great game against Rice.
Yeah, and that's the thing that's interesting about Memphis is they haven't lived up to the expectation. I mean, the expectation going into the year for Coach Silverfield and company was win the American, win the conference. And while, like we said, they're still lurking and not mathematically eliminated from the title game contention, they're on the outside looking in, and it's pretty realistic to say they probably won't have a shot to win the American title this year. However, they've won a lot of games that they probably had no business winning because of their clutch ability down the stretch, because of their ability to make plays when it matters most. North Texas and Charlotte are the two that stand out to me, and then this one against Rice as well. It's another one that I think you had a chance to win, and you found a way to do it. The two games that you couldn't do that in was UTSA and Navy. Two good football teams. You lost to two of the better teams and two bowl-eligible, should be bowl-eligible teams down the line. I think that's what's going to stand out to me whenever I look at this Memphis squad, is they did it in a couple of games and they didn't in a couple of games. It's time for them to try and not make this a 1 or 2 possession game.
Right.
Try and take care of business early, because this team's good enough to do so.
Yeah, and I think they have this game coming up against UAB, and it's another one of those opportunities where if they play the game how they're supposed to, they'll win. But you can get stuck too, because UAB has some weapons as well. You saw them; they were up 20-3 against UConn at the half last week, just not able to hold on to that. So they've had their moments too where they can stay in games, they can give teams a hard time, and so I think that Memphis just really needs to kind of be on their A game and just firing on all cylinders and do the little things right, so that this one against UAB doesn't get too close and they fall to another conference opponent. Yeah,
find your groove. Use the weapons accordingly. I mean, those are the ways that I think Memphis gets it done this week against the Blazers, and make sure that they continue to get back on track. And I mean, they're sitting at 8 wins, and we're saying it's a down year for Memphis. That's what's crazy about it. Yeah, down year with a
They're
top,
still lurking. They're literally still lurking.
Yeah,
so.
They're one of the top teams in the country. They'll have this UAB matchup bye week, followed by Tulane. That'll be a monumental meeting at the end of the year, whether title game hopes are on the line or not. That will be a fun one on November 28th. Another game that's basically a bowl game play-in that I want to keep an eye on this upcoming week is South Florida and Charlotte. The Bulls and the 49ers. Charlotte entering at 3-6. They have to win out in order to make a bowl game. And Charlotte, of course, with a couple of big wins on the year. They take down Rice. They take down East Carolina, but they've lost 3 straight to Navy, Memphis, and Tulane. Again, top teams in the conference across the board. But then you finish out with South Florida, Florida Atlantic, UAB. A chance to do so. You can totally win out if you're Charlotte, but it starts this week against South Florida, who, by the way, is sitting at 4-5, and they're getting to the point where they're trying to win 2 of their final 3 games to get into a bowl game as well. What do you think about this matchup?
Well, I think for Charlotte, that some of those losses that they had were just the little mistakes, right? They were right in that game with Memphis. I honestly thought they should have won. Sean Purdy looked really good at the end of the game, and they just couldn't hold on at the end. And then even some of that game against Tulane, I know the score didn't reflect it, but early on they looked good. You know, they made some good plays. And so I think that Charlotte just needs to clean things up, and then they have a good chance against South Florida. For South Florida, I think a big part of it comes down to their offense. They're trying to still get in a rhythm with Bryce Archie at quarterback, and I want to see them finally click in the way that they need to. They showed signs of it against UAB, but then last week against Navy, they looked a little discombobulated again. So I want to see South Florida be a little bit better offensively, and I think that can help them beat the 49ers.
Well, 35 points against UAB. 44 points against Florida Atlantic. They've done it before, just not against the defense that's been highly touted. And Charlotte defensively has been decent this year. I'm not going to say they're one of the better in the conference, but they've done things that are good at certain points throughout the year, and it mostly stems off of the ground game. If they can get their guys going with guys like Norton and Kelman and others in that ground game and the rushing attack, that's what's going to give Charlotte an opportunity to win against South Florida this week, because if they can control the clock, control the line of scrimmage, continue to move the ball effectively down the field, that's where things are going to continue to roll in the right direction for the 49ers. Just one of those games out of a whole slate of games this weekend. Lots of fun here on All-American. Here is the full Week 12 schedule inside the American Conference. East Carolina and Tulsa get it started early. Of course, North Texas and UTSA on Friday night, and then Saturday, noon Eastern, my game of the week on ESPN2, Tulane in Annapolis, Maryland, taking on the Navy midshipmen. Tulane with a chance to lock in not only their own title hopes, but Army's as well. What other games are you looking forward to the most?
I mean, you already said Tulane and Navy, so I can't talk about that one. But I'm excited for the UAB-Memphis one because I want to see how Memphis plays against the Blazers. And I don't know, I get excited for all the games, to be honest with you. That is such a, coach speak general answer. But I think I'm circling Tulane, Navy. And then I want to see how East Carolina, if they can keep that momentum up.
Yeah, that's a big one too. East Carolina taking on Tulsa. That's a fun one. Teams that are off this week: Army and Rice are off this week, and we talked about Army a little bit early on as one of those teams that, of course, is standing at the top of the American table. But here's the thing: I use the term "table" in a football show, right? Mm-hmm. That means we must have some sort of soccer on the horizon.
I've heard we do have some soccer on the horizon.
You got the chance to sit down with a soccer superstar inside the American.
Yeah, Maeve English. She was the defensive player of the championship in the women's soccer championship. East Carolina winning their first ever American title. Take a look at it.
Schnell. Cross will come in. Their bodies in the box. Bierman came out, got a slight touch to it. It's still loose. East Carolina with a shot at a game winner. It's all over. They are going to the NCAA tournament.
For the first time in East Carolina history, the Pirates are the AAC champions, and I'm joined now by their goalkeeper, Maeve English. Maeve, we just saw Annabelle's goal, so let's start there. When you saw that hit the back of the net, what was your first move?
I wish I could tell you. I think I blacked out, honestly. It was just absolute scenes.
You know, you've had a couple days to take it all in. What has it been like just knowing you are an American Conference champion?
It's just absolutely surreal, to be honest. I have just been trying to soak it all in. I've gotten a ton of messages, and I'm just so excited for the team to have this opportunity too. I think we had a great welcoming party when we came back, and then selection show yesterday. So it's just awesome to see Pirate Nation kind of rallying around us too. So yeah, we've just been trying to soak it all in since then.
We're going to talk more about your team in just a little bit, but I want to talk a little bit about you first. You were the most outstanding defensive player of the tournament. You had 5 saves in that championship game. You were just incredible in the net. What enabled you to be so locked in, not only in that championship game, but the entire tournament?
Yeah, I think, across my 5 years, I definitely felt like this was the most confident I've been in our group going in to a tournament like this. I think we all knew, especially the way we went out last year, we just, I think with that, the way we went out last year, we've got this core group of seniors, which is so many. I feel like almost the stars aligned for us to be successful in this tournament. And so I just really kind of tapped into this overall team belief and just really solid core group of just belief in our system. And we knew that, I think, going in, if we could execute, we could absolutely win the whole thing. So I think just tapping into that team confidence really just allowed me to kind of trust my teammates and trust that if I do exactly what I'm supposed to, we're going to be successful. So
that confidence was so prevalent. First game, you won in double overtime. Second game of the tournament, you won in PKs. And then that final game, you won in double overtime. What enabled your team to be so resilient, just pushing through all of those minutes of soccer?
Yeah, it was definitely a test for sure. I think being in the Florida heat too, that was something that we had to adjust to. But I think the best thing was just we were able to focus on kind of one game at a time. we kind of found like our own individual motivation for each game. Like obviously Charlotte is one that we wanted to win because it was such a like just devastating way to go out last year. So I think we kind of obviously we're able to get up pretty good for that one, I think. And then USF too, we didn't do as well against them in the regular season, so we knew, I think going back at the film, that we could have absolutely played them a lot better in the regular season. So we had that as motivation. And then Memphis is just one of those teams, like I feel like we've gotten really close to beating them the last couple years, and it just couldn't have, like we haven't been able in the last couple years to put kind of a well-rounded performance against them. So I think for that to culminate kind of in the final is just kind of all you can ask for. Got to exercise some demons going through those 3 games, and each one I feel like had its own, I guess, kind of personal motivator for our team. So it was just nice to kind of right some wrongs that maybe we had in the regular season or last year, and then obviously just in the championship to come away with a win like that is so big and awesome.
How special is this? You know, you mentioned that group of seniors. How special are they to this team, and how would you describe what this team has meant to you?
I mean, this group of girls, like you can, it's almost like a physical feeling. Like I genuinely feel like you could like reach out and grab the physical belief that this team had in our ability to be successful. And you can especially feel it in that group of seniors. Like we've got a lot of girls who are seniors who have had injuries and not been able to play, but we've also got girls like me and AB and Abby, Sam, all of them, like they have been here for 4 years. Like we've all been through the same experience. And I honestly feel like that experience like is what just carried us through. Like we've got this just tight-knit group that has been in the trenches with each other. It's bonded us. Like it's I mean, really can't ask for anything better. Like we just all know what each other are capable of, and so we just have this overall sense of belief and just I think sense of like accomplishment. Honestly, we wanted so hard to like be able to walk away from this season like we've left no stone unturned, just leaving everything out there so that we can really end all of our careers with kind of a good bookend.
The bookend is possibly approaching, but you know, I have a couple more games left. We're going to talk about that matchup in the NCAA tournament, but I want to quickly go back. You mentioned the bond between your teammates. You also have a special connection to East Carolina because it's your hometown school. So what has it been like these last 5 years getting to play as a Pirate?
I mean, just exactly what you would imagine. My mom and I yesterday, I went over to my parents' house just to kind of soak it all in with them too. I think they're just as excited as I am to have had this opportunity. And we were going through like some baby pictures, and it was just me in like a ECU uniform, and it's so crazy to have once been in the shoes of like our youth player ball girls that come out to like the our home games, and to now be in the shoes of like those girls that I used to look up to. It is just it's like a storybook, to be honest. And I feel so grateful to be able to represent this university. It just means the absolute world to me.
You're giving me chills just thinking about you in the little uniform as a young girl. And now, as you were saying, getting to be the example for those young girls. Now, you have a big one coming up on Friday. You take on South Carolina, as we saw in the selection show. So what has been the messaging to the team? How do you get ready for that one?
Well, I mean, just like I said, we've got this close-knit group, and I mean, throughout the season, we have really taken on the challenge of going into these places away from home. I think our conference is one of the most spread out across the country, so we've had a lot of away trips where we're all traveling together for like, I mean, we've had 12-hour travel days this season, and then we've all got to come together, play the game, and then fly all the way home. And those days are hard and they're long, but I think our team has done such a good job of like taking on this challenge of traveling and then being this close-knit group that just goes into other people's places and enjoys the challenge of beating them on their home field. So I think we're just kind of taking this as another opportunity to do that. I mean, an SEC school, like, that place is going to be rocking. So I think we're really excited to kind of get together and, just take on another one of those challenges together as a group.
Yeah, your team is 5-0-2 on the road. So you definitely like being away from home, it seems. We're very excited to watch you all play in that one. Maeve, thank you so much for joining us today, and congratulations again.
Of course. Thank you.
I love every bit of that. Maeve English, not only is she a great soccer player and had some success on the pitch, but a phenomenal interview. And I thought the way that you outlined it there about the drama and the energy that it was needed and the really, in order to run the table in a soccer tournament like that, it takes everything, all 11 plus on the soccer pitch to get it done, and that's exactly what ECU did.
Well, it was
especially when you play like all these overtime games and you go into the later minutes.
Double overtime, PKs, double overtime. I asked some of her teammates too throughout the week, and I was like, what is it about this team? And they're like, vibes. Like, we have good vibes. I'm like, all right, I'm all about.
That's what our show's all about.
We're
good
all
vibes.
about the good vibes.
Mm-hmm.
I love good vibes. A lot of these teams that we're going to talk about coming up too want some good vibes as they head into trying to qualify for some bowl games.
They want the good vibes, but is it going to be a goodbye? That's the thing. Good vibes, goodbye. Whichever one it's going to be. Let's take a look at some of the 5-win teams that are on the verge. They are right on the edge of getting into the bowl eligibility conversation, 2 of which, East Carolina and North Texas, have the 5 wins, whereas UTSA probably could have 5 if they didn't want to blow a 42-7 lead against Tulsa or whatever that game ended up being early in the campaign. They would be 5-4 as well, but they're 4-5, which is unfortunate for them. But at the same time, they're running out of time with Army lurking on the road at West Point. And then you've got North Texas in a rivalry game coming up on Friday and Temple as your only games at home. Which one of these 3 teams do you feel like is in the best spot to get that 6th win?
I would say East Carolina right now. I think North Texas still just has a couple battles, especially with the way that UTSA has been playing as of late. So I'm taking East Carolina to get that 6th win.
I like that. And I think East Carolina has been playing better football.
Yeah, I agree.
Really, both of these teams, the other 2 teams, have been as of late. They're just not being talked about nearly as much. Plus, you've got the Tulsa game, which you would think would be winnable for East Carolina on the road. They've got that tough one against Navy lurking in their final home game. That's tough. The one thing I will say about UTSA, though, is they have 2 home games remaining, and I mentioned that early in the show, 27-3 with Jeff Traylor. I think there's a good shot that UTSA finds their way bowling even after a very disappointing start to the season. Okay, what about some of these other teams that are in the mix, 4-win teams or 3-win teams? You've got South Florida, Charlotte, who has to win out against South Florida, UAB, Florida Atlantic. That is doable. Don't get me wrong, it's doable. And then you've got Tulsa that has a little bit of a tougher schedule because they have East Carolina, a high-flying FAU team, and then that South Florida bunch as well.
Yeah, I think out of these 3 teams, again, I'm looking at South Florida. I mean, they only need 2 more, and I think they're winnable games. I wouldn't count the other 2 out by any means, though. If you just – both Charlotte and Tulsa have showed us that they can win football games, right? They have those late-game heroics. They've been able to win some, but I just think the way that their schedules look right now, I think the best possibility out of these 3 is definitely South Florida.
Well, and we talked about it earlier that Charlotte and South Florida playing each other this week, that ends up being essentially a bowl game play-in, especially for Charlotte, but it does put a lot of pressure. If South Florida cannot win this week, it puts a lot of pressure on the Bulls going up against Tulsa and Rice at the end of their stretch to try and work their way to that 6th win as well. So, going bowling, it's not like Thanksgiving bowling with the family whenever you're done with your
on
Thanksgiving turkeys. Yes, that's why they call it a turkey.
A turkey? Wait,
in bowling.
You mean like bowling with a bowling ball, or like you have a turkey bowl like football game with your family members?
Yeah.
Oh,
you do both.
Okay, I do the football game.
You play the football game before lunch, and then after lunch you relax and you go bowling. Bowling alleys are open on Thanksgiving.
But are you talking about bowling, like going bowling and football going bowling? Or are you talking about like you go to a bowling alley on Thanksgiving?
Yeah, it's awesome.
You're you're messing with me right now.
I'm not. I will find a way to prove it to you.
I want a social media post on Thanksgiving of you bowling.
Oh, it won't be this year.
Because you're lying.
I work for a team that plays on Thanksgiving every year.
I forgot about that.
So
you don't go bowling on Thanksgiving.
The family tradition stays the family tradition regardless.
So the Youmans family tradition is to go bowling.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
That's exactly
I'll hold you to that.
Yes.
But I think now what we need to talk about is not bowling, but some of the top plays in the conference this week, because we
Thank
had
goodness.
You're confusing me. Anyway, we had championship season going on. We have basketball season back. We also have football that we just spent an hour chatting about. So it was really hard to pick some top plays this week, but I think we did the best job that we can.
Let's do it. Let's
All
get
right,
into top play.
Let's get into it. Yeah, I said basketball season is back. How about this one? It wouldn't be basketball season without a slam, Kyle. That's Dwan Odom from Tulsa. Look at the confidence on this. Woo. Boom! Oh, my goodness.
That's when you know basketball season's fully back. A little rock the baby into a windmill on the backside of a fast break and a breakaway dunk. I love it. I'm excited about Eric Konkel's bunch with Tulsa. I think they've got a little something cooking. They're a little under the radar this year. Just watch out for Tulsa. I think it'll be interesting as the year goes on.
All right.
They remind me a lot about the Temple Owls team last year that made a run in the tournament. That's what Tulsa kind of reminds me about.
All right. I like it. I'm going to hold you to that.
All right, speaking of other teams in the conference, we go back to the football field. Temple up against Tulane, 14-0 Green Wave in the second, trying to put it away, and they go for the long ball to do so. Darian Mensah launches this one. Mario Williams comes down with it in coverage. Williams, you're too good at this. You can't do that. You're already leading 14-0. Why are you still putting up the long ball? That's because Tulane doesn't have any regard for any Temple Owls life at that point. Great throw, even better catch, and this gain results in a touchdown on the ensuing play. Tulane wins it big time.
Well, we talked about the bullies earlier in the show, right? Tulane's bullying it right there.
Bullies.
I mean, bullies. Mario Williams looking really good. And, another player that was looking fantastic this entire week was Maeve English. We already talked to her. So let's see some of the performance that she had this one in the semifinal. Elevation, huge save. That was actually on SportsCenter, play number 7, the emotion. Oh my goodness. I was so fired up watching this entire game. Kyle, oh my gosh.
Wow, that's an unbelievable save. And I mean, we saw a little bit of it earlier, but the reaction time is still the same. I mean, the fact that it's kind of bounding around like that, that's a fantastic shot. Fantastic shot, and the fact that she just went up and rejected it with the one hand like that is unbelievable. Maeve English, my props to you. Defensive player of the tournament. I mean, overall a game changer for the Pirates, who are champions and playing in the big dance. Can't wait. All right, back to football we go. Blake Horvath, we've mentioned his names in top plays once or twice this season. I like this one, though. He turns the corner, keeps the foot in bounds, and he dives for the pylon. Horvath finds the end zone again. He is next level. Watch this. I love this slow-mo look right here. All there is just a blade of grass. That's all he needs. That's all he uses, right? There. Look at that right toe. How did he keep it in bounds? I don't know. And the reason why is because he's Blake Horvath and he can do anything.
He's Blake Horvath. Like you said, not the Horvath for Heisman anymore, but he's still playing like the Horvath for Heisman.
Nuts.
Oh,
still great.
My goodness. I
love it.
I love the dive at the end of it, too.
Yeah.
Speaking of endings of things, we have to talk about the ECU Pirates one more time. I know. But look at how they ended the American Conference Championship game. Annabelle Abbott. Oh my gosh. That's the first conference championship in the American for the Pirates. The senior coming up big.
I had this East Carolina team earlier in the season, and the fact that they play such stifling defense, the way that they play all the way from whistle to whistle is just tremendous. And you saw it in this tournament when it went into double overtime. It went into penalty kicks, goes into overtime again, and it's a golden goal to hoist the trophy. Even better. And we just talked about hats off to English, hats off to that entire ECU Pirates organization as they continue to keep their season alive, and they have a little bit of hardware to take home with it as well.
Very exciting for them. They play South Carolina in the first round of the NCAA tournament. So the Battle of the Carolinas, East Carolina and South Carolina. Make sure everybody's tuning into that one for sure.
East Carolina's not a state, though.
I know it's not. It's still Carolinas.
I mean, Battle of the Carolinas is North Carolina and South Carolina.
But I'm
right?
doing the American Conference version of it because we have one American team in it, and that's the team that we care about.
That is true. I only care about East Carolina as well. It should be a state. Let's petition it to make it happen.
I think we should definitely get the state. Who do we contact about that?
I'll figure it out.
Okay,
we'll get
sounds
back
good.
to it.
All right, East Carolina's going to be a state.
It's only right that All-American is ending by talking about rearranging one of the 50 states in the United States of America. That does it for us here from Studio A. Hope you had as much fun as we did. Special guest to everybody who took some time to join us. And, of course, Zach Fisher, Chris Gray in the back for doing great work and getting us on the air as well. We'll be back next week. We've got more football, possibly an American Conference title game matchup to talk about as well, basketball, and a whole lot more, how ECU does in the NCAA tournament too. We'll keep you updated on all of it. For Maria Trivelpeice and our entire American crew, I'm Kyle Youmans saying so long from Studio A. We'll see you next week.